Hi, everybody. Meg Czapiewski here with your market update. The August data is out, so we're going to look at those. We're also going to look very quickly at what we're seeing in September to give us kind of a picture of what we expect to see the rest of the year. And this month, I've decided to share the stats in a 3-month or 3-year trend, rather, because I think it's worthwhile to take a look at the overall trends since the whole interest rate thing shifted back in 2022. And when we start with new pendings, even though you could say, oh, well, look, year over year, last August, we're up 13.7%, we're up 5.8%. These years look pretty darn close. The activity of buyers buying is not drastically changed over these last 3 years. What is changing is the amount of listings that are coming on. So the activity, peak of last year was 718, peak of this year in Fairfax County is 722, 3 more homes sold. So it's not so much the trends of buying as the trends of people putting their homes on the market after not putting their home on the market for quite some time. So looking at supply and demand, because that's where this is going to show up. And by the way, red is detached or single family home, green is townhomes. Okay, year over year, townhome supply and demand is up almost 35%. Single family, almost 20%. And the peak, because of the number of listings that are coming on, is happening 38.9% more than what we saw this time last year. And there's nothing close to that over the last 3 years. So those little bell curves don't look the same when it comes to supply and demand. They look pretty similar in terms of buying activity, but the number of listings that's coming on is causing the days on market to increase, the amount of absorption and the activity of the buyer is not outpacing the number of listings that are coming on. And for that reason, we're seeing a shift in buyer leverage because there are more listings. And in this case, could show all sorts of stats, but when you have new pendings that are way up 1.5 times, 1.6 times more than what the ratio of buying activity is, it's going to create that buffer of extra listings. So moving over to the pricing side, because this has been a consistently good news story for some time, and it hasn't changed. Across the country, the typical year over year value increase in value is between 2 and 3%. In many cases, it's 1%. So it's still an increase. You're living someplace, paying down your mortgage and getting an increase in your equity. But we've been spoiled in our area, and certainly over the last several years, of seeing crazy big numbers in equity. And what we're seeing now is, okay, year over year, it was 3.8% increase in single family. It was a slight dip, 2.2 lower, negative 2.2% for townhomes. But the median price of a townhome is $625 in August of 2025. Let's go back 3 years. It was $585. That's not so bad. And in single family, $825 was the median sales price 3 years ago, and now it's $960. So, the year over year is not necessarily what you want to track, and that's why I felt like it was important to show this 3-year trend because very few of us get in a home and sell within 1 year, even 2 years. And frankly, 3 years is short compared to the national average. But because we have such a heavy military community and they're on somewhat of a 3 to 4 year rotation, 3 years is a good number to kind of take a look at. All right, we're going to flip over to Prince William County, which actually, of all of our counties that we cover, Fairfax, Prince William, and Stafford, has the highest home buyer demand index right now at a moderate. The only places in our local area that are beating it right now are Arlington and Alexandria City. So again, here's our bell curves. The activity, the buying activity doesn't look all that different. Townhomes down here, single family up here, but the increase year over year, 5.1%. But when you flip over to supply and demand, and let's not look at that one. Let's look at this because it's easier to understand. Holy mackerel, what happened? A lot of listings have caused that inventory to just sit, and we're at one. A good news story between last month and this month for single family is that it went down a week or so, but we're way higher than what we're used to seeing in our area. And that's because of the increase in inventory, that slower pace of absorbing the inventory, not of buying activity, but absorbing that inventory is what's giving buyers the leverage that they have been missing for years now, ever since 2020. We're going to take a look at the pricing trends because, again, these are good news stories, both in townhome. Look at the difference here. In 3 years, it went from a median sales price of $430 to $522, like almost $100,000 difference. That's wowza. And then in single family homes or detached homes, $619 is a median sales price in September of 2021 when things were going for pretty, stacked prices. And then $718. So $619 to $718, another $100,000 jump up. That's a good news story. So don't get focused on 1.3% equity over between August of 2024 and August of 2025. This is what we focus on for pricing. We're going to go to Stafford, and then I'm going to share the preview of 2025 rest of year. So go back to market and new pendings. We actually had more buyer activity in 2023 and 2024. Well, maybe not 2024, but 2023 than we're seeing in 2025. That's different than what we were seeing in the other two counties. So Stafford is experiencing growth year over year, but not in a 3-year trend. Okay. So townhomes, geez, pretty steady. I mean, it's just hard to make any statistical opinions about this. It's been fairly steady for the last 3 years. But the detached family activity up a little bit this year. When we look at supply and demand, however, they're seeing the same thing that the other counties are. Like, inventory has increased, and the number of months that it's going to take at this current buying pace to get through the listings, if nothing more comes on at all, is 2.73 months, like 2 months, 3 weeks. That's a long time based on what we've been experiencing for the last several years. And that's where that buyer leverage is coming from, because buyers have more choices. The inventory is piling up and sellers have to hear that. Okay, so we had a little blip. I forgot to show you the pricing trends look where they're at. 3 years ago, 510 in single family, 585. And townhomes, 380 was the median home value in a townhome. Now it's up to 441. So still a good news story. Maybe not the $100,000 jumps that we saw in Prince William County, but proportionally, this is good news, guys. So try not to over analyze the year over years and the last month, this month, especially when we're talking about prices. We're seeing some great stories there. And wow, yes, a couple months ago, your neighbor's house might have sold for that number or that number, but you probably bought down here or even lower. And if you're going to sell in this market, you've got to understand that, and you've got to realize there's a lot of other inventory out there that is competing against yours. I'm going to share something else very quickly because this is September's, yeah, good. This is September's data, and it's a quick market shot for just, I can only go back as far as 1 week in this particular format that we have. And for Fairfax County, that's how many listings are sitting on the market right now today, 1,595. And in the last 7 days, another 155 said that they're coming to the market, whether that's 1 week from now, 2 weeks from now, hard to know. In the last 7 days of these 1595, 300 of them almost just showed up. So they're still coming at a pretty fast pace. And what went under contract was just 300 in the last 300 or in the last 7 days. So yeah, there's a graph that I could have showed you that shows the ratio of new listings to new pendings, and you want to see that at 1, inventory comes on, inventory comes off. But because we've had enough months where that didn't happen, a little bit stayed on the plate, and then a little bit more stayed on the plate, and before you knew it, you could break bread for an entire neighborhood because the inventory is filling up. And when you have new pendings, active under contract and pendings of 300, and you just put 300 new actives, that would be a good news story, but it isn't when you look at the total accumulation, 1,595. Another thing to take a look at is the price decreases. So in the last 7 days, 197 homes had to take a price drop to probably shoot to get into this bucket here of active or pendings, active under contracts or pendings. And then look at this, 104 listings came off the market, withdrew, canceled, or expired. Now, some of those may come back on. Honorable Service Realty has listed 5 homes in the last month that were past expireds or past canceled, but this is telling. And because we're getting toward the end of the year, these are the people that are potentially going to come back out of the chute in January, February, March of 2026. So if we take a look at the next 2 counties, which we'll go through quickly, it's the same story. 723 total on market, 131 new listings, 56 more coming. When you take a look at, this 723 versus the only 158 in the last 7 days that have gone under contract, it does help to keep pace with the new actives versus the going under contracts, even a little better, which is why we saw Prince William as having a moderate home buyer index versus the other 2 counties being in that steady version of a home buyer index. And then 33 that called it quits, a number that I hadn't focused on before, but back to active. So 24 of these ended up being under contract at some point, and then something failed and they had to go back on market. 96 price drops in the last 7 days in Prince William County. And then briefly in Stafford, they've got 414 listings accumulating. New actives, only 40. That's not so bad. And they're active under contract and pending 44. So they're keeping up, but they got 10 times the inventory, just like what you're seeing in the other counties. So yes, they're seeing price drops. 48 price drops out of, and then only 44 that went under contract. So these guys are, they're trying to stay ahead of the bow wave, but that's the challenge, guys. You absolutely have to price for this market, or you're going to be in the price decrease category. You have to think about the fact that there is more inventory, in some cases 10 times more inventory than what is attriting in a 7-day period and a 2-week period. And that's why we're seeing it go from, 7 days on market on average for homes that go under contract to almost 3 months on average in some neighborhoods, some locations, some counties. So I hope that this has been illuminating to you. We are going to see this continue. Even with the interest rates reducing, the amount of inventory that has accumulated has forced sellers to rethink their price, to rethink the concessions that they're willing to give to the seller, to the buyer. And it could mean a really big burst early in 2026 for all of these homes that have come off the market. And we're going to see bigger numbers here soon, because if 1595 plus 723 plus 414, that's a lot of homes in Northern Virginia that are sitting there right now. And the pace of buying at some point, we just haven't been able to keep up. So if you would like to know a little bit more about the strategies to get your home sold, whether it's now or in 2026 or in the future, please give me a call. Please contact us. Sorry this was so long, but this is such an interesting time in the market, and I wanted you guys to just get the scoop. All right, hang it up now. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.